The late Eastern Han Dynasty, during which Shan Shangjin lived, was an era filled with upheaval and suffering. The land of China was shrouded in the smoke of war and the devastation of natural disaster. Historical records indicate that within the few decades of Shan Shangjin's lifetime, there were more than 20 major natural disasters, droughts, floods, river embankment breaches, earthquakes, locust plagues, and other calamities struck in quick succession, and each disaster had an extensive reach, far beyond being small-scale, local incidents. These frequent natural disasters led to a series of severe consequences. Agricultural production was severely devastated, fields lay barren, food production declined sharply, productivity dropped significantly, and the lives of ordinary people were plunged into hardship. Prolonged exposure to hunger and cold deteriorated the physical condition of the populace, greatly weakening their resistance and creating an ideal breeding ground for the emergence and spread of infectious diseases. As the saying goes, after a major disaster, a major epidemic is inevitable. After each natural disaster, epidemics would spread rapidly among the people. At the same time, during the late Eastern Han Dynasty, the three kingdoms stood in a tripartite confrontation, and warfare continued year after year. Wars not only directly caused a large number of casualties but also severely disrupted social order and damaged the economic foundation. Issues such as large-scale population migrations and the deterioration of living environments, and the scarcity of medical and health facilities emerged one after another, further exacerbating the spread of infectious diseases. The old saying, after a major war, a major epidemic is bound to follow, was fully demonstrated at that time. Historical records of the Eastern Han Dynasty describe the Central Plains as a place where white bones were exposed in the wild, and people resorted to cannibalism. The common people were caught in a tragic situation where they either died in wars or from diseases. When Kan, one of the 7 scholars of China, wrote in his 7 Sorrows, "When I went out, all I saw were white bones covering the plain. On the road, there was a starving woman who abandoned her child in the grass. Hearing the child's cries as she looked back, she wiped her tears and did not turn back. Not knowing where she herself would end up, how could she ensure the survival of both herself and the child?" This vividly depicted a scene of hell on earth. A gaunt and emaciated woman, helpless to save herself, had no choice but to abandon her child in the grass. Even upon hearing the heart-rending cries of her child, she could only leave with tears streaming down her face, a sight that filled one with profound sorrow. Against this backdrop, Shan Shangjing's family was also severely affected. In the preface to Treatise on Febrile and miscellaneous diseases, he wrote that his family had originally been quite large, with more than 200 members. However, starting from the first year of the Chainan era 196 AD, within less than a decade, 2/3 of his family members passed away, and 7/10 of them died from febrile diseases. At that time, febrile diseases generally referred to various exogenous diseases. Witnessing the massive deaths of his relatives and the common people, Shan Shangjing was deeply moved, and a strong sense of medical mission welled up within him. In order to find ways to save them, he earnestly studied ancient teachings and extensively collected various prescriptions. He conducted in-depth research on ancient medical classics such as Plain Question Su, 9 chapters Jiayujiwen, Great Treatise on Yin and Yin Yang Balance, and records of fetal pulse and medicinal prescriptions and combined with his rich clinical experience in pulse diagnosis and syndrome differentiation. Eventually, he completed the treatise on febrile and miscellaneous diseases in 16 volumes. From the perspective of academic development, medical works before the Han Dynasty were mainly divided into 2 categories of medical classics and empirical prescriptions. Medical classics focused on basic theoretical research. For example, the 7 schools of medical classics recorded in the art and literature records of the book of Han Hanshu Yuwenzi, among which an account of the Yellow Emperor Huangning Yijing elaborated in detail on human physiology, pathology, the relationship between humans and nature, as well as basic treatment principles and methods. It served as an important cornerstone of the theoretical system of traditional Chinese medicine. On the other hand, empirical prescriptions emphasized practical prescriptions based on experience. These were collections of effective prescriptions accumulated by ancient doctors through long-term clinical practice. Most of these prescriptions were directly prescribed by doctors according to the symptoms of patients and recorded after being verified effective in clinical practice. For instance, prescriptions for 50 diseases unearthed in Gansu and prescriptions for treating all diseases unearthed from the Muwanbai Hantung both belonged to the category of empirical prescriptions. Although they had certain clinical efficacy, they lacked systematic theoretical support, and the correspondence between prescriptions and symptoms was relatively simple and unsystematic. Building on the achievements of his predecessors, Shan Shangjing made bold innovations. He skillfully integrated the theoretical depth of medical classics with the practical experience of empirical prescriptions and established a syndrome differentiation and treatment system that combined theory, principles, methods, prescriptions, and medicinal substances. This system encompassed a complete medical theory, clear treatment principles and methods, as well as specific prescription compositions. It laid a solid foundation for the development of clinical Chinese medicine. As a result, he became the founder of clinical Chinese medicine and the originator of the individualized treatment approach of syndrome differentiation and treatment, playing a crucial role in inheriting the past and paving the way for the future in the history of traditional Chinese medicine. In the Song Dynasty, the imperial court established a bureau for the collation of medical books. Officials such as Lin Yi, Sun Ti, and Gao Bahan believed that among all diseases, febrile diseases are the most urgent. They took the lead in collating and finalizing the treatise on febrile diseases in 10 volumes and 22 sections. In the second year of the Shaiping reign of the Song Dynasty 1065 AD, the treatise on febrile diseases was printed and published for the first time, and thus it had a fixed version. The initial large character edition was difficult for the common people to afford due to the high cost of paper and production. Later, at the request of the emperor, a small character edition was printed and sold at cost price to make it more accessible to the public. Song Dynasty editions were of high quality, with excellent paper, meticulous collation, and beautiful fonts, and were of extremely high value. However, over time, the Song Dynasty edition of the treatise on febrile diseases gradually disappeared. During the operation of the Bureau for the collation of medical books in the Song Dynasty, some books related to the versions of the treatise on febrile diseases were also printed. The Golden Chamber Jade Manual Classic in 8 volumes had the same content as the treatise on febrile diseases, and its characteristic was that the articles and discussions were in the front, and the prescriptions were compiled at the back. That is, the first 6 volumes were the original text, and the last volume were the prescriptions. This book was printed to prevent the treatise on febrile diseases from being lost. In addition, Wen Shu, the Hanlin academician, discovered 3 volumes of damaged bamboo slips. Discussion on the essential prescriptions of the Golden Chamber Jade Manual. In the Imperial Library, the upper volume was an excerpt from the treatise on febrile diseases. In the middle and lower volumes were speculated to be excerpts from the sections on miscellaneous diseases and gynecological diseases. The Bureau for the Collation of Medical Books deleted the content of febrile diseases in the upper volume, reorganized the middle and lower volumes, and then printed and published it. This is the synopsis of the Golden Chamber that had been passed down to this day. At this point, the treatise on febrile and miscellaneous diseases was officially divided into the treatise on febrile diseases in 10 volumes and 22 sections, and the synopsis of the Golden Chamber in 3 volumes. In the 27th year of the Wangli reign of the Ming Dynasty 1599 AD, Xiao Keimai, as a book engraver, medical expert, and publisher, made important contributions to the dissemination of the treatise on febrile diseases. He first engraved Chen Wuji's annotations on the treatise on febrile diseases, and then engraved Song Yonggang's classification of febrile disease syndromes and the synopsis of the Golden Chamber. Later, a friend showed him the small character edition of the Song Dynasty treatise on febrile diseases. He found that Chen Wuji's annotations were not in the original appearance of the Song Dynasty edition, and there were some deletions, so he decided to re-engrave the Song Dynasty edition of the treatise on febrile diseases. Xiao Keimai presented these 4 books to his father, who named them the complete works of Shan Shangjing. When re-engraving, he carefully imitated the Song Dynasty edition, striving to make the number of lines per page, the number of characters, and the strokes of the characters consistent, realistically restoring the style of the Song Dynasty edition, enabling later generations to have a general understanding of what the Song Dynasty edition of the treatise on febrile diseases looked like. He played an indispensable role in the dissemination process of the treatise on febrile diseases. In conclusion, in the dissemination process of the treatise on febrile diseases, Liang Longjing laid the foundation by writing the book. Wen Shu preserved the core by organizing it. Many medical experts in the Tang Dynasty spread and promoted it. The Bureau for the Collation of Medical Books in the Song Dynasty printed and finalized it, and Xiao Keimai in the Ming Dynasty re-engraved and passed it on. These predecessors have all made great contributions to the dissemination of the treatise on febrile diseases and the development of traditional Chinese medicine, and they deserve to be remembered.